The massive alien ship appeared above Earth's atmosphere on a quiet Tuesday morning. Its sleek, metallic surface reflected sunlight like a second moon, causing millions to stop and stare at the sky in wonder. Within hours, every news channel worldwide showed the same image: humanity's first contact with intelligent alien life. Inside the United Nations Emergency Assembly in New York, world leaders gathered to meet the representatives of the Galactic Council. The room buzzed with nervous energy as three tall, elegant aliens walked through the main doors. Their skin shimmered with a pale blue glow, and their movements were smooth and precise. Ambassador Gray, the lead alien representative, stood at the podium. His large, dark eyes scanned the room with obvious disappointment. "We have been observing your planet for the past 3 rotations," he announced, his universal translator converting his musical language into flat English. "Our findings are unfortunate." Behind him, a holographic display showed Earth's current state: crowded cities, polluted oceans, and areas devastated by war. The human leaders shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Your species still fights among themselves over primitive resources," Gray continued. "You burn fossil fuels for energy. Your fastest ships can barely reach your own moon. By galactic standards, you are children playing with sticks in the dirt." General Roberts, representing Earth's military forces, stood up. "With all due respect, Ambassador, we've made incredible progress in the past century. Our technology. Progress." Gray's laugh sounded like tinkling glass. "You haven't even mastered clean fusion energy. Your medical technology still can't cure simple genetic diseases. And your space exploration." He gestured to another hologram showing Earth's satellites. "These primitive machines cluttering your orbit are like stone tools compared to our quantum communications network." Dr. Wilson, Earth's leading physicist, tried to defend humanity's achievements. "We've developed quantum computers, started exploring AI technology, and our understanding of particle physics is equivalent to a child's drawing compared to galactic art." Gray interrupted. "Our preliminary scans show your civilization ranks as a Class 4 primitive world. This classification is—" He paused, searching for the right word— generous. The room erupted in angry murmurs. President Thompson stood up, her voice firm. "Ambassador Gray, humanity may not have your advanced technology, but we have other qualities that make us." "Yes, yes." Gray waved his hand dismissively. "Every young species claims to be special. The Council has heard it all before. Your emotional responses, your creativity, your determination." He looked around the room with 3 of his eyes while the 4th rolled upward in what appeared to be their version of contempt. "These traits are common among primitive species. They usually fade once proper technological advancement is achieved." The silence in the room grew heavy. Humans had dreamed of first contact for centuries, imagining a moment of wonder and shared knowledge. Instead, they got mockery and dismissal. Then Captain Thomas, a quiet figure who had been observing from the corner, stepped forward. Unlike the others, he showed no anger or frustration. Instead, a small smile played on his lips. "Ambassador," he said calmly, "if we're so primitive, surely we pose no threat to your advanced civilization." Gray's skin rippled with what might have been amusement. "Of course not." "Then you wouldn't mind putting your assumptions to the test." Thomas's smile grew slightly wider. "Unless you're afraid your assessment might be wrong." The ambassador's skin changed from pale blue to deep purple. The other aliens murmured among themselves, their musical language filling the air with chiming sounds. "You dare challenge the Galactic Council's judgment?" Gray's voice carried a dangerous edge. "No," Thomas replied. "I'm offering you the chance to prove it." As the room held its breath, no one realized that this moment would later be marked in galactic history as the beginning of humanity's rise to power. The games were about to begin, and the aliens were about to learn a valuable lesson about underestimating humans. Ambassador Gray's tall figure loomed over the United Nations Council table, his skin now glowing a deep purple with what humans were learning to recognize as irritation. The room's tension could be cut with a knife as he pulled out a small device that projected a giant hologram in the center of the room. "Very well," Gray said, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. "You wish for a test? Then let the Council present you with our standard evaluation trials." The hologram shifted to show 5 distinct symbols. 5 challenges that will prove, once and for all, your species' true worth. Captain Thomas stood calmly, hands clasped behind his back, studying the rotating symbols. The other human leaders watched nervously as he stepped closer to the projection. "And what happens if we succeed?" Thomas asked, his voice steady and confident. Gray's fourth eye blinked rapidly, a sign of what might have been laughter. "If, by some impossible chance, you succeed, your species will be granted full membership in the Galactic Council. This includes access to our technology, trade routes, and protection." He paused for effect. "But when you fail?" "When?" Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Yes, when," Gray continued. "Your planet will be classified as a resource world for the next 1,000 years. Your people will serve the more advanced species of the galaxy as is proper for your developmental stage." The room erupted in protests. President Thompson jumped to her feet. "You can't possibly." "We accept," Thomas interrupted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Gray's skin rippled with patterns of light. "Let me explain the challenges before you make such a foolish decision." The hologram zoomed in on the first symbol. "Engineering. You must solve a problem that has puzzled our greatest minds. Adaptability. Survival in conditions your species has never faced. Cultural achievement. Prove your civilization has value beyond primitive survival. Problem solving. Face a crisis that threatens multiple worlds. And finally, combat tactics, though I doubt you'll reach this stage." "Is that all?" Thomas asked, and a few humans in the room actually chuckled, breaking the tension. Gray's skin flashed with bright spots, a sign of anger. "You find this amusing? Perhaps I should mention that no Class 4 civilization has ever passed even 2 of these trials. Most fail the first." He moved closer to Thomas. "Your primitive brains cannot possibly comprehend the complexity of what you'll face." "When do we start?" Thomas asked simply. The alien ambassador pulled out another device. "You have what you call 1 Earth week to assemble your teams. You may select your best minds for each challenge." His voice dripped with condescension. "Though best is certainly a relative term for your species." Dr. Wilson stepped forward, adjusting her glasses. "And who judges these trials?" "An impartial panel from the Council's most advanced civilizations," Gray replied. "Not that it matters. The results are usually obvious." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing. You may not use any technology beyond your current development level. We wouldn't want you accidentally destroying yourselves with tools you don't understand." As the alien delegation left the room, the human leaders burst into argument. Some called for refusing the challenge, others demanded military preparation, and a few suggested surrendering immediately to get better terms. Thomas remained quiet, watching the hologram still rotating in the center of the room. President Thompson approached him. "Why did you accept?" she asked softly. "The stakes are impossible." Thomas smiled, the same confident smile he'd worn earlier. "Ambassador Gray made 3 crucial mistakes today," he said. "He underestimated us. He gave us challenges that don't depend on advanced technology. And most importantly," his smile widened, "he told us we couldn't possibly win." "And those are mistakes?" President Thompson asked. "The biggest ones possible," Thomas replied. "Because if there's one thing humanity has proven throughout history, it's that telling us something is impossible." He turned to face the room full of arguing leaders. "Is the surest way to make us prove you wrong." The next week would show the galaxy exactly why that was true, and why they should have been more careful about challenging the human spirit. The massive viewing chamber aboard the Galactic Council's ship fell silent as the hologram displayed their first challenge. In the center of the room, A perfect representation of a dying star spun slowly, its core pulsing with unstable energy. "This is star HD 7249, Ambassador Gray announced, his skin glowing with smug confidence. "It will collapse within 30 rotations, destroying 3 inhabited worlds in nearby systems." He turned to the human engineering team. "Your challenge is to stabilize it." Dr. Miller, the head of Earth's Nuclear Physics Division, stepped forward to study the hologram. Behind her, the rest of the human team, 5 of Earth's brightest engineers and scientists, began taking notes on their tablets. "Interesting," Dr. Miller said quietly, adjusting her old-fashioned glasses. "And how many alien species have attempted to solve this?" 17, Gray replied. "All with far more advanced technology than yours. All failed." His fourth eye blinked rapidly, that dismissive gesture humans were beginning to hate. "You have 6 hours to present a solution." As the alien delegation left, Captain Thomas approached the engineering team. "Can it be done?" Dr. Miller was already drawing diagrams on her tablet, her eyes never leaving the hologram. "They've given us access to all previous attempt data," she said. "Every species tried to solve this with brute force, pushing energy into the star's core or trying to contain it with artificial gravity fields." "Those didn't work?" Thomas asked. "They worked temporarily," Miller replied. "But they're treating the symptom, not the cause." She looked up, and to everyone's surprise, she was smiling. "They're thinking like advanced civilizations." 5 hours later, Ambassador Gray returned with the Council's evaluation team. He found the humans huddled around a simple holographic display of their own, showing what looked like crude drawings compared to alien technology. "Time's up," Gray announced. "Though I doubt you have anything to present." Dr. Miller stepped forward, still smiling. "Actually, we do." She pressed a button on her tablet, and their simple hologram expanded to match the star display. "You've been trying to force the star to stay alive. We're suggesting something different." "Oh." Gray's skin flickered with amusement. "Do explain." "We let it die," Miller said simply. "But on our terms." The alien evaluation team burst into musical laughter, but Miller continued undaunted. She pointed to her diagram. "The star's core is like a pot of boiling water with a lid on it. Previous attempts tried to hold the lid down or add more heat. We're suggesting removing the lid carefully." "That's insane," one of the alien scientists said. "The energy release would be catastrophic." "Not if we guide it," Miller replied. "See these points?" She highlighted specific areas around the star. "We place gravity manipulators here, here, and here. Not to contain the energy, but to create channels for it to escape gradually." The laughter died as the alien scientists studied the proposal. Gray's skin began to pulse with uncertain colors. "We run the numbers," Miller continued, "and timed the releases precisely. The star doesn't stabilize. It transforms into something new, but stable." She looked directly at Gray. "Sometimes the best engineering solution isn't about building something bigger or stronger. It's about working with natural forces, not against them." The evaluation team huddled together, speaking in rapid musical tones. After several minutes, the head evaluator turned to face the humans. "This solution," he said slowly, "has a 78% chance of success. Higher than any previous attempt." He sounded confused, almost disturbed. "How did you?" "As I said," Miller replied, "we thought about it differently. Sometimes being primitive means you're not locked into one way of thinking." Ambassador Gray's skin had turned a pale, sickly color. "This is impossible," he muttered. "You must have stolen this technology, these ideas from somewhere." Captain Thomas stepped forward. "No, Ambassador. This is purely human ingenuity. And this was just the first challenge." His smile matched Miller's. "Still think we're playing with sticks in the dirt." The alien delegation left in a hurry, their musical language sounding distinctly distressed. As they went, Thomas turned to Miller. "Will it really work?" "Better than they think," she replied. But that's not what has them scared. She looked at the star hologram, still spinning slowly in the center of the room. What scares them is that we solved it with basic physics and simple tools. Imagine what we'll do when we actually get our hands on advanced technology. The first challenge was over. Humanity, 1. Aliens, 0. And they were just getting started. The massive testing chamber looked like a slice of hell. Red sand stretched for miles under a burning orange sky, while acid rain fell in random patches across the landscape. 2 suns blazed overhead, making the air shimmer with heat. "Welcome to the adaptability arena," Ambassador Gray announced, his skin reflecting the orange light. "This environment combines the harshest conditions from 50 different worlds. Your team must survive here for 24 Earth hours." Lieutenant Adams led the human survival team, a group of 5 specialists chosen from different military and civilian backgrounds. They stood at the chamber entrance, studying the hostile landscape before them. "The rules are simple," Gray continued. "Reach the safe point." He pointed to a glowing beacon visible on a distant hill. "You may use only the basic supplies in your survival packs. No advanced technology." "What's the record for reaching the safe point?" Adams asked, checking his pack straps. 12 hours, Gray replied proudly. "Set by the Centauri, a species specifically evolved for harsh environments." He looked at the humans with 3 eyes while the 4th watched the acid rain fall. "Most teams don't make it at all." Adams turned to his team. "Ready?" They nodded, faces serious but determined. As they stepped into the chamber, Gray's voice followed them. "Try not to die too quickly. It's rather uncomfortable to watch." The first challenge hit them immediately: the heat. It felt like walking into an oven. But instead of panicking, Adams gathered his team in the shelter of a rock formation. "First things first," he said, opening his pack. "Let's see what we've got." The aliens watched through monitoring devices as the humans did something unexpected. Instead of rushing toward the beacon like every other species, they took time to inventory their supplies and study their environment. "What are they doing?" one alien observer asked. "They're wasting time." "No," Gray replied slowly, his skin shifting to a thoughtful blue. "They're planning." The humans had found basic supplies: rope, water purifiers, simple tools, and protective clothing. Working together, they'd modified their gear. They turned their jackets inside out to reflect heat, created makeshift goggles from transparent water containers, and used rope to tie themselves together. "Look at this," another alien observer pointed to the screen. "They're using the acid rain patterns to plan their route." Indeed, Adams and his team had noticed that the acid rain fell in predictable sections. By timing the patterns, they could move safely between them. They also discovered that the red sand, when wet with acid rain, hardened into crude protective shells. Hour after hour, they pressed on. When they found a cave, they didn't just rest. They studied the rock formations and used them to determine wind patterns. When they crossed a field of burning geysers, they turned it to their advantage, using the steam vents to refill their water supplies. In the observation room, the alien scientists watched with growing amazement. "They're not just surviving," one whispered. "They're learning to use the environment." At the 18-hour mark, something unprecedented happened. The human team reached the safe point, beating the previous record by 6 hours. But they didn't stop there. "What are they doing now?" Gray demanded, his skin flashing with confusion. Adams and his team were setting up markers along their route, creating a trail that could help others follow their path. They were not just completing the challenge, they were making it easier for the next team that might face it. When they finally exited the chamber, exhausted but alive, Ambassador Gray was waiting. "How?" he demanded. "How did you do it?" Adams wiped sweat from his face. "Humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. Too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry. Earth threw everything at us. We survived because we learned to adapt and work together." He looked back at the chamber. But more importantly, we learned to share what we learned. Every human achievement is built on the lessons of those who came before us. Gray's skin had turned an unfamiliar shade. "You're supposed to be primitive." "Maybe." Adams replied with a tired smile. "You need to rethink your definition of primitive. Being new to the galaxy doesn't make us simple. It just means we haven't forgotten how to adapt." The adaptability challenge was over. Humanity had not only survived, they had excelled, and they had done it the human way, together, resourcefully, and with an eye toward helping others. 2 challenges down, 3 to go. The aliens were starting to look worried. The grand presentation hall of the Galactic Council ship hummed with anticipation. Hundreds of alien species gathered to witness humanity's attempt at the Cultural Achievement Challenge. Their previous successes had drawn unexpected attention from across the galaxy. "This challenge is different," Ambassador Gray announced, his skin glowing a confident green. "Engineering and survival skills are one thing, but true civilization requires cultural advancement." He gestured to the massive display screen behind him. "Show us humanity's greatest cultural achievements." Professor Baker stepped forward. Unlike the previous challengers, she carried no equipment, no tools, and no technology. Just a small data chip containing Earth's presentation. "Before we begin," Baker said calmly, "I have a question. In your culture, what is the purpose of art?" Gray blinked all 4 eyes in sequence. "To demonstrate technical mastery and precision, of course. To show advancement." Baker smiled. "Then let me show you something different." The lights dimmed. The first image appeared. A cave painting from Earth's ancient past. Simple handprints on stone walls, crude animal drawings, and early human figures. Musical laughter rippled through the alien audience. "This is their cultural achievement." Someone whispered, "Children's drawings." But Baker wasn't finished. The images began to change, flowing through human history. Cave paintings became Egyptian hieroglyphs. Greek sculptures followed Roman mosaics. Renaissance paintings blended into modern photography. Each image stayed just long enough to make an impression before flowing into the next. Then came the music. It started with simple drum beats, the kind early humans first made around fires. The rhythm grew, adding voices, then instruments. Classical orchestras merged with tribal songs. Jazz flowed into rock. Folk music danced with electronic beats. The aliens sat in stunned silence as Earth's musical history washed over them. "Stop," Gray commanded suddenly. His skin had turned a pale, thoughtful blue. "This piece, what is it?" The music playing was Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. The composer was deaf when he wrote it, Baker explained. He could never hear his greatest work. "Impossible," an alien observer said. "Why would someone unable to hear create music?" "Because that's what humans do," Baker replied. "We create, not just to show skill, but to express what we feel, to share what's in our hearts." The presentation continued. Now it showed human dance, ballet dancers spinning alongside break dancers, traditional folk dances next to modern performances. Literature appeared, stories from every culture, poems that had survived thousands of years, tales that had shaped civilizations. "Your art is chaotic," Gray observed, "imprecise. It follows no single pattern." "Exactly," Baker said. "Our culture isn't about reaching one kind of perfection. It's about exploring every possibility. Look at this." The screen showed children finger painting next to a master's oil painting. "In our culture, both of these have value. Both are expressions of human creativity." She turned to face the alien audience. "We don't just create art to show technical skill. We create to connect, to feel, to understand ourselves and each other." The final sequence began, a collection of Earth's greatest achievements. The pyramids beside modern skyscrapers, the Great Wall next to the International Space Station, cave paintings next to digital art, all of human culture flowing together in a celebration of creativity. When the lights came up, The alien audience sat in complete silence. Then, from somewhere in the back, someone started making the sound. It took the humans a moment to realize it was applause, not just from one species, but from many. Different appendages, different ways of showing appreciation, but all recognizing what they had witnessed. Ambassador Gray's skin swirled with complex patterns of color. "This is not what we expected," he admitted. "That's because you were looking for advancement in the wrong places," Baker said. "True culture isn't about reaching some final, perfect form. It's about the journey, the exploration, the constant quest to express what it means to be alive." She gestured to the now dark screen. "We may be young by galactic standards, but our culture is rich because of that youth, not despite it. We're still growing, still creating, still dreaming." The cultural challenge was over. And for the first time, the aliens weren't just impressed. They were moved. 3 challenges down, 2 to go. Humanity was proving to be far more than anyone had expected. The mood in the Galactic Council ship had changed. Gone were the mocking laughs and dismissive glances. Now the aliens watched the human team with intense focus as Ambassador Gray presented the 4th challenge. "This simulation represents a real crisis we faced 50 years ago," Gray explained, his skin a serious shade of dark blue. 3 colonies, each on different planets, all facing complete destruction from different threats. The hologram showed 3 worlds, one facing a massive asteroid storm, another dealing with a deadly virus, and the third suffering from failing atmospheric generators. Dr. Rogers led the human crisis response team. She studied the hologram carefully, noting how previous species had tried to solve each crisis separately with their advanced technology. "The time limit?" she asked. 8 hours, Gray replied. "No species has ever saved all 3 colonies. The best managed to save 2. His 4th eye twitched. "With technology far beyond yours." Rogers turned to her team. A mix of scientists, doctors, and strategic planners. "Let's look at the big picture first." The aliens watched as the humans did something unexpected. Instead of immediately jumping into action, they gathered around a simple whiteboard, drawing connections between the 3 crises. "They're wasting time," one alien observer muttered. "They should be deploying solutions." But Captain Thomas, watching from the side, smiled. He recognized what they were doing. They were thinking like humans. 3 hours into the challenge, Rogers approached the Alien Council. "We have a solution," she announced, "but we'll need to coordinate all 3 colonies." "Impossible," Gray stated. "The colonies have different governments, different priorities." "Exactly," Rogers replied. "That's not the real problem we're solving." She activated their simple presentation. "The asteroid storm. We can't stop it, but we can use it." She pointed to the 2nd planet. "Those rocks contain minerals that, when processed correctly, can create a cure for the virus." The alien scientists leaned forward, their skin colors shifting rapidly. "The infected colony's atmospheric processors," Rogers continued. "They're failing because they're working too hard. But if we relocate most of the population temporarily to the 3rd colony, their processors will be overwhelmed too." An alien scientist interrupted. "No," Rogers smiled, "because we'll have the healthy colonists from the virus planet help upgrade them using technology they've already developed. Meanwhile, their empty cities provide shelter for evacuees from the asteroid storm." The room fell silent as the aliens processed this approach. "You're not trying to solve each crisis," Gray said slowly. "You're using each problem to help solve the others." Humans learned long ago that the hardest problems often solve themselves when you help people work together, Rogers explained. She highlighted their evacuation plans, resource-sharing strategies, and coordination protocols. "We don't have your technology, so we learn to use what we have more efficiently." The simulation ran. Hour by hour, the crisis indicators dropped. The asteroid storm provided resources instead of destruction. The virus cure was manufactured and distributed. The atmospheric systems were upgraded and stabilized. When the 8-hour mark hit, all 3 colonies were safe, but the humans had done more than just save them. They had helped them build new trade relationships, share technologies, and create lasting alliances. Ambassador Gray's skin had turned a color the humans had never seen before. This, he paused, all 4 eyes focused on the results. This solution is better than the one we actually used 50 years ago. Because you tried to solve it with power, Rogers said gently. We solved it with cooperation. Sometimes the best solution isn't about having the most advanced tools. It's about using what you have in smarter ways. She looked at the simulation results. Your species see problems as obstacles to overcome. We see them as opportunities to bring people together. The 4th challenge was complete, and humanity hadn't just passed. They had redefined what success looked like. Only the combat challenge remained, but now the aliens weren't laughing anymore. They were starting to understand that they had seriously underestimated what it meant to be human. In the observation room, Captain Thomas watched the alien scientists frantically studying the human solution. Still think we're primitive, he whispered to himself, knowing that the biggest surprise was yet to come. The combat simulation chamber was massive, stretching out like a giant arena. Hundreds of alien species packed the observation decks, no longer here to mock, but to witness what humans would do in their final challenge. Ambassador Gray's skin shifted between colors as he addressed the human team. Combat tactics are the true measure of advancement, he said, trying to sound confident. Your earlier successes were unexpected, but surely a primitive species cannot match our military expertise. Commander Jackson stepped forward with his 5-person team. Unlike the heavily armored alien warriors they'd seen, the humans carried minimal gear. What are the rules? Defend this position for 1 hour, Gray pointed to his central command post, against waves of increasing difficulty. You'll face combat situations from the last 1,000 years of galactic warfare. The alien audience murmured. No species had ever lasted the full hour. Jackson studied the terrain. Any restrictions on tactics? Only primitive weapons and tools, Gray replied. No advanced technology. Jackson smiled. Perfect. The simulation began. The first wave was straightforward. A frontal assault by hostile forces. The aliens expected the humans to meet force with force. Instead, they watched in surprise as the human team split up. What are they doing? Gray demanded. They're dividing their strength. But Jackson's team wasn't dividing. They were adapting. 2 members used the terrain to set up crossfire positions. Another created simple but effective traps using their basic supplies. The remaining 2 fortified the command post with makeshift barriers. When the attack came, the humans didn't just defend. They turned the attackers' strength against them. Large forces were led into prepared killing zones. Advanced weapons were avoided rather than challenged directly. The humans seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Impossible, an alien general muttered. They're using tactics from a dozen different warfare styles. The second wave brought aerial attacks. The aliens expected panic. Instead, they watched the humans quickly create a network of covered positions, using smoke signals to coordinate their movements. By the third wave, the alien observers were taking frantic notes. Do you see? Captain Thomas asked Gray as they watched. You thought being primitive meant being simple, but humans had to learn warfare the hard way, one step at a time. We remember every lesson. The fourth wave introduced electronic warfare. The aliens thought this would finally overwhelm the humans. Instead, Jackson's team switched entirely to hand signals and prearranged patterns, completely bypassing the electronic attacks. As the final minutes approached, Gray's skin had turned almost white. How are they doing this? They're facing our most advanced combat scenarios. No, Thomas corrected. We're facing combat scenarios designed by species who relied on advanced technology. Humans, we learned to fight with sticks and stones first. Everything else is just an upgrade. The simulation ended with the humans not just surviving, but controlling the entire battlefield. 1 hour, no losses, a perfect defense. In the stunned silence that followed, Ambassador Gray approached Jackson. "Your species." He paused, all four eyes blinking rapidly. "We made a grave error in judgment." "Yes," Jackson replied simply. "You assumed newer meant better. But humans know something you forgot. True advancement isn't about having the best tools. It's about understanding the basics so well that you can adapt to anything." The Galactic Council convened immediately. Their decision was unanimous. Earth was reclassified as a Class 1 emerging power with full membership rights. As the human team prepared to return to Earth, Gray stopped Captain Thomas. "There's one thing I don't understand," the ambassador said. "You could have shown this strength immediately. Why didn't you?" Thomas smiled. "Because the greatest human strength isn't our engineering, our adaptability, our culture, our problem solving, or even our combat skills." He looked at the gathered aliens. "It's our patience in letting others learn about us in their own time." As the humans departed, the alien observers watched their ship disappear into space. They had expected to find a primitive species playing with sticks in the dirt. Instead, they found something far more powerful, a young species that had mastered the fundamentals of existence so thoroughly that no challenge was beyond them. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had arrived, and they had done it their way. Not with advanced technology or overwhelming power, but with the simple, unshakable strength that comes from knowing exactly who and what you are. The aliens had mocked humanity. Now, they would learn from them.